My name is Liam. In the ecosystem of my family, I've always been the structural support, the unseen beam holding up the beautiful facade. I'm the one you call for a jump start, the one who knows how to patch drywall, the quiet presence that ensures the lights stay on. I am, for all intents and purposes, the background character whose primary function is to prevent the entire set from collapsing. My younger sister, Claire, is the star of the show. She is a whirlwind of brightness, sound, and constant applause. I'm the guy who operates the curtain. This dynamic was never built on grand, dramatic gestures. It was forged in the quiet accumulation of small, consistent slights. If we both brought home report cards with good grades, she would get a brand new jacket to celebrate her brilliance, while I would get a simple nod and a warning. Nice, but don't get cocky. If an appliance broke, it was my job to fix it. If money was tight, it was implicitly understood that I would pick up an extra shift at my part-time job. The day I turned 18, my father shook my hand, his grip firm, and said, "I'm proud of you, son." For her 18th birthday, he handed Claire the keys to a carefully detailed, gently used sedan. She cried tears of pure joy. I took the public bus to my classes and convinced myself that the inconvenience was building character. I currently hold a position in the IT field, a quiet job with steady hours and reliable pay. Last year, I co-signed the mortgage on my parents' house because, as Dad explained with a pat on my back, family helps family, and Mom added in her soft, persuasive tone, "It'll look wonderful on your credit score, sweetheart." I believed them. More accurately, I wanted to believe them, because wanting to believe is so much easier than admitting you're not a family member, but a utility line that everyone else plugs into for power. Claire is the golden one, the one who seems to float through life on a cloud of parental investment. Every season brings a new, expensive hobby, complete with a corresponding wardrobe and set of gear. My parents refer to this constant spending as investing in her potential. When I once asked what that potential was, Dad just chuckled and said, "You wouldn't get it, Liam. You're the practical one." Practical. That's their code word for invisible. I had just returned home from a budget weekend trip with a few friends. We spent 2 nights in a rented cabin near a lake, a place that smelled permanently of pine sol and damp towels. There was no cell service, and I deliberately left my laptop behind. That was the whole point of the trip, to completely unplug. Driving back, my phone came to life, buzzing with a dozen notifications from our group chat. Not a single message from my family. This was normal. I swung by my parents' house on that Sunday evening, planning to grab my MacBook and its charger before heading back to my own apartment. The television in the living room was blaring too loud. The air was thick with the scent of baked chicken and the artificial tang of lemon cleaner. I found Dad in the garage, leaning over his workbench with a slow, deliberate focus, as if he were coaxing secrets from the engine parts. Mom was at the kitchen sink, her rings set aside, her hands deep in soapy water, humming along to a tune on the radio as if the world were perfectly in order. "Hey," I said, stepping into the kitchen. "Came to get my laptop. I left it on my desk." Mom didn't turn around. "Hi, honey, it's in your room," she replied, her tone suggesting the answer was obvious. "Yeah, I know." I headed down the hallway to my old bedroom. My desk was clean, not just tidy, but sterile in a way it never, ever is. There were no stray cables, no forgotten sticky notes, no subtle indentation in the wood where the charger usually sat, just a polished, empty rectangle of wood. My stomach performed that sickening lurch, the the kind you feel when an elevator drops too fast. I walked back to the kitchen. "Where is my MacBook?" Dad came in from the garage, meticulously wiping his hands on a rag that was already clean. "Funny you should ask," he began, a small smile playing on his lips, the kind he uses before delivering a punchline he thinks is clever. I sold it. I was so certain he was joking that I actually let out a short laugh. "What?" He leaned casually against the counter. "To teach you a lesson about responsibility. You leave valuable things lying around here, it shows you don't really need them, right?" My laugh died in my throat. "You sold my laptop." Mom finally turned from the sink, her lips pursed into a thin line, the expression she adopted when preparing for what she considered a toddler's tantrum. "You left it here, sweetheart. That means it wasn't essential to you." She tilted her head, a gesture of feigned sympathy. "You have a computer at work. That's not how ownership works," I said, my words coming out slower and more deliberate than the panic I felt inside. "That is my personal property." Dad held up both hands in a placating gesture. "Relax, it's not that deep. If you really need to print something out, you can use the family desktop." The family desktop, a relic from 2011 that took 10 minutes to boot up. "There's personal data on that Mac," I bit out, my voice dangerously calm. "Work files, personal projects. Then you should have been more careful with it," Mom retorted, her tone sharp. "Actions have consequences, Liam." Just then, I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway, followed by the cheerful double chirp of a car alarm being disarmed. Then came a new sound, the bright, eager ding-ding of a tiny electric bell. Claire rolled into the driveway on a brand-new, gleaming e-bike. It had a pristine white frame, thick, rugged tires, and a massive battery pack attached to the down tube like a precious gem. She flicked her helmet off with a dramatic hair flip and shouted through the open kitchen door, "Thanks again, Dad. It rides like a dream." Dad puffed out his chest, a smirk of accomplishment on his face. "Looking good, kiddo. How much did that cost?" I asked, the question escaping my lips before I could stop it. Claire beamed, her smile radiating pure, unadulterated joy. $2,300, but it's an investment, you know, for my commute. It's all about sustainability." She glanced at me, her expression a mix of pity and condescension. "You should try being spontaneous for once, Liam." Mom let out a little laugh as if Claire had said the most charming thing in the world. Dad clapped her on the shoulder. "Anything for my girl." I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just placed my hands flat on the kitchen counter and felt the sticky, faint ring left by a glass that hadn't been wiped up. My name was on the mortgage for this house. My laptop was not. Claire spun the front wheel of her new toy, watching it blur. Dad tossed me the rag he'd been holding. "Don't make this a thing, Liam. Make yourself useful and set the table." I grew up in a home where money was a scoreboard, and my role was to ensure the family team never went into the red. When Claire wanted to attend a competitive soccer camp and needed new cleats, Dad worked overtime shifts, and Mom expertly shuffled bills around. When I expressed interest in joining the high school's robotics club, the immediate response was, "That's a bit too expensive, Liam. Just be grateful you already have a computer." That computer was a hand-me-down with half the keys missing. The pattern didn't stop there. Every significant milestone was tilted in her favor. At 16, I spent every weekend bagging groceries, meticulously saving for a beat-up used car. When I finally came home, proudly holding an envelope with $2,000 in cash, Dad pulled me aside and asked to borrow, half for a temporary cash flow issue. He promised he'd pay me back within a month. I never saw a single dollar of it again. 2 months later, on Claire's 16th birthday, a shiny, second-hand Honda Civic with a giant bow and balloons tied to the side mirrors was sitting in the driveway. Dad draped an arm around her shoulder and announced, "Safe and reliable. Nothing's too good for my girl." I took the bus. That moment set the tone for my entire adult life. My function in this family was not that of a son, it was that of a resource. When Mom decided the kitchen needed a new coat of paint, she expected me to cover the cost of the supplies. "You're the handy one, sweetheart. Claire's got all her schoolwork to focus on." When Dad was stressed about a looming credit card bill, he'd ask me to help him out for the month, just as Claire was heading to the mall for a new homecoming dress. When the roof developed a leak, I was the one up on a ladder in the pouring rain at midnight, patching it. Things only escalated after I graduated from college and landed my stable IT job. It was quiet work, nothing flashy, but it paid enough for me to get my own apartment and finally start building a savings account. That's when Dad approached me with his salesman grin firmly in place. "This family mortgage is crushing us, Liam. The interest rates are killing me. If you co-sign with us, it'll give us some breathing room. It'll boost your credit, too." "It's a win-win." I hesitated. Mom immediately joined in, her voice laced with that specific tone of gentle guilt she'd perfected over the years. "Sweetheart, it's just a bit of paperwork. You'd be helping us keep this house. One day, it'll all be yours and Claire's anyway." I signed. A year later, every time a mortgage statement arrived, my name was right there on the payment line. Every month, I'd ask Dad if everything was okay, and he'd brush me off with a casual, "Relax, it's handled." Meanwhile, Claire continued to float. She changed her major twice before dropping out of community college entirely. Mom's go-to line was, "She's just finding herself." Dad's was, "She's got so much potential, Liam. The last thing she needs is you smothering her with pressure." This potential manifested as a $1,200 camera for her brief photography phase, a $600 keyboard for her music phase, and a $900 sewing machine for her fashion design phase. I ended up paying a portion of the credit card bill that covered at least 2 of those purchases when Dad couldn't quite make it that month. Every time I tried to push back, even gently, the script was ready. "Dad, don't be so selfish." "Mom, you just don't understand. She's the baby of the family." "Claire, you're just jealous of me." I eventually realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about our designated roles. I was the supply. She was the demand. The small, daily humiliations often stung more than the large financial requests. Like the time I brought over a car full of groceries to stock their fridge, and at dinner, Dad announced, "Good man, Liam. He knows how to contribute." Then he proceeded to hand Claire the last slice of pie, telling me I'd probably had enough. Or the time I finally upgraded my own phone after months of saving, and Mom accused me of showing off, only to present Claire with a brand new iPad 2 weeks later. The message was always, consistently, the same. I could never win. If I had something nice, it meant I was selfish. If Claire had something nice, it meant she deserved it. The breaking point was creeping closer when Dad casually suggested I start covering a little more of the mortgage. "Since you're single, Liam, you don't have the same responsibilities we do." Then Mom added softly, "And Claire is thinking of moving out soon. Maybe you could help her with her rent to get on her feet." That's what family does. The translation was clear. More of my money out of my pocket, more free rides for her. Every conversation had the same relentless undertone. They saw my paycheck before they saw me. When they looked at Claire, they saw potential and a bright, shiny future. When they looked at me, they saw a wallet with legs. For years, I told myself this was normal, that this was what being responsible looked like, that I was building my credit, that I was being an adult. But every small demand, every unfair comparison, chipped away at the illusion that any of this was fair. And then came the MacBook. The one significant thing I had bought for myself, the tool I used for my job, for my side projects, for keeping my own life organized. Gone, transformed into Claire's shiny new toy on wheels. That was when I knew the stakes had changed. They weren't just borrowing from me anymore. They were actively taking things out of my hands and giving them directly to her, and they had the audacity to call it a lesson. And the next lesson they planned for me was already on the horizon. It wasn't a holiday that finally caused everything to crack open. It wasn't some huge, dramatic celebration. It was just another Sunday dinner, the kind I had been guilted into attending for my entire life. Mom had texted me earlier in the day. "Be here at 6 sharp, sweetheart. Don't forget to bring dessert." The unspoken translation. Bring a contribution and don't expect to be thanked for it. I arrived with a store-bought pie from the bakery near my apartment. $15. Nothing fancy, but I knew Mom wouldn't have baked anything herself. When I walked in, the house smelled of overcooked roast beef and bleach. Dad was already settled in his recliner, his eyes glued to the football game. Claire was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her gleaming new bike helmet sitting on the coffee table like a trophy. "Hey," I said, setting the pie on the counter. "About time," Dad grunted without looking away from the screen. Mom appeared from around the corner. "Oh, good, dessert, you remembered." I didn't bother to respond. We sat down to eat. It was the standard routine. Dad served himself a massive portion first, followed by Claire, then Mom. By the time the serving platter reached me, all that was left was a single chicken wing and some overcooked potatoes. I wasn't bothered. I had learned years ago not to expect a full plate at their table. Halfway through the meal, Dad cleared his throat with the air of someone about to make a grand proclamation. "So, Claire's thinking of getting an apartment downtown." Mom clapped her hands together softly as if this were brand new information. "Isn't that just so exciting?" Claire shrugged, but I could see a self-satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Yeah, I found this really cool place. The rent's kind of high, but, I'll figure it out." My dad's gaze locked onto mine. "Your sister's just starting out. She shouldn't have to be drowning in bills. We were thinking you could help her out with the rent just until she gets settled." My fork stopped midair. "Excuse me," Mom chimed in, her voice calm but with a steely edge. "Sweetheart, you're stable. You live by yourself. You don't have the expenses we do. It's only fair." "Fair," I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. "You sold my laptop less than a week ago." Dad waved a dismissive hand. "Are you still on about that? It was just a computer. This is her starting her life." I placed my fork down on the plate with a quiet click. It wasn't just a computer, and I am not paying her rent. The room fell completely silent. Claire finally looked up from her phone, her eyes wide with indignation. "Wow, okay. Don't be such a jerk, Liam." "It's literally nothing to you." "It is not nothing," I replied, my voice holding firm though my chest felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. "I am not your personal ATM. I am not paying for rent or tuition or hobbies or e-bikes or anything else, ever again. Dad's chair scraped against the floor as he leaned forward, his voice low and menacing. You watch your tone. You do not speak to your mother or your sister that way. I'm not, I said. I'm telling you the truth. I'm done. Mom shook her head slowly, her face a mask of profound disappointment. You've always been so cold, Liam. Family is supposed to help family. What are we supposed to tell people if you won't even step up for your own sister? Tell them the truth, I shot back. Tell them you used my name and my credit for your mortgage. Tell them you sold my property behind my back to fund her lifestyle. Tell them that every time Claire wants something, you expect me to pay for it. Claire slammed her phone down on the table. You are being so dramatic. Dad helped you too. Who do you think paid for your braces? I let out a short, harsh laugh. You mean the braces I finished paying off myself with my grocery store job at 16 because Dad forgot to make the last 3 payments. Her cheeks flushed a deep red. You're just jealous. And in that moment, something inside me finally broke. It wasn't a loud, messy shattering, but a clean, quiet snap. I looked from my dad's angry face to my mom's tearful one, to Claire's smug pout. My voice came out perfectly level, as if I were giving a technical report. This isn't about jealousy. This is about being finished. I will not be paying another dime. Not for this house, not for Claire, not for anything. Dad's fist slammed down on the table. The dishes rattled. I stood up, my movements calm and deliberate. My hands weren't even shaking. I'm done. Mom's voice turned brittle. If you walk out that door, Liam, don't you bother coming back. Don't come looking for family when you're old and all alone. I met her gaze directly. I would rather be alone than be bled dry. I picked up my keys and walked to the door. Behind me, I heard Dad mutter something I couldn't make out. I heard Claire mumble, "Pathetic." I heard Mom start to cry, the manufactured sobs she always used when she wanted someone to fold. But I didn't fold. For the first time in my entire life, I didn't sit back down and swallow it. I walked out into the cool night air. The sound of their arguing faded behind the closed door, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, there was silence. The fallout was immediate and predictable. By the time I got back to my apartment that night, I had 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and a single text from Claire that read, "Wow, you seriously ruined dinner. Congrats." I didn't respond. The next morning, my phone was a constant buzz. 15 calls before noon. Mom left a voicemail where she was crying so hysterically I could barely understand her. Liam, sweetheart, I don't know what's gotten into you. We're your family. You don't just turn your back on family. Please don't do this. Next came one from Dad, his voice thick with anger. You think you can just walk away after everything we've done for you? You're an ungrateful, selfish kid. Don't you forget whose roof you grew up under. And, of course, a text from Claire with her signature venom. Whatever. You have always been bitter. I'll figure out rent without your drama. Enjoy your sad little life. I left them all unanswered. By the 3rd day, the tone of their messages shifted from emotional manipulation to financial threats. A text from Mom. Mortgage payment is due Friday. Your father is so stressed. Please don't let us down. Then another. If you don't pay your share, we could lose the house. Do you want that on your conscience? I sat there, staring at the message, and a strange clarity washed over me. My role in this family had always been to be the solution to every problem, the patch for every hole. I wasn't just helping. I was their entire support system. I didn't reply. When the payment deadline passed, Dad called me 10 times in a single hour. Then a new message appeared. Fine, you want to play tough guy. We'll see how tough you are when the bank calls. "You're on this loan too, Liam. They'll come after you." I blocked his number. The silence that followed lasted for 2 whole days. Then a new post appeared on Claire's Instagram. A picture of her smiling brightly next to her e-bike with the caption, "Learning to live my best life without people who just want to hold you back." The comments were flooded with heart emojis and "You go, girl" messages from her friends. It should have hurt. It didn't. It felt like validation. In the meantime, my phone began ringing with numbers I didn't recognize. Collection agencies for family debts I never knew existed. I ignored them all. At work, I threw myself into my projects. When my coworkers asked if I was okay, I'd just say I was tired. But at night, sitting alone in my quiet apartment, I started to notice how peaceful it was. No pleading texts from Mom. No quick favor calls from Dad. No messages from Claire bragging about her latest acquisition. Just silence. And the silence was beautiful. 2 weeks later, I made one final trip to their house. Not to talk, not to reconcile, but to get my name off their mortgage. The note I had left on their fridge after the laptop incident had, of course, been ignored. I knew it would be, which is why I came prepared with paperwork. I had spoken with the bank and found the legal pathway to extricate myself. It wasn't simple, but it was possible. Dad answered the door, his eyes cold. "What do you want?" "To get out," I said simply, holding out the forms. He scoffed. "Coward!" Mom appeared behind him, her face puffy and stained with tears. "Please, Liam, don't do this to us. Think about your sister." I shook my head. "I am thinking about her, that's why I'm done." Dad muttered something under his breath that sounded like useless or weak, but when the reality of the legal documents set in, he signed. Mom refused at first, but after 10 minutes of me standing there in complete silence, she finally caved. Claire, predictably, was not even home. When it was done, I put the pen down and said the only thing left to say. "You'll figure it out without me." That night, for the first time, my phone stayed completely silent. No missed calls, no angry texts. The silence stretched into days, then weeks. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop, wasn't bracing for the next demand. I woke up early, made myself breakfast without rushing, went for long walks, and read books I'd been meaning to get to for years. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and that felt like freedom. It has been several months now since I walked out of that house and officially untangled my name from their financial burdens. Months since the constant buzz of my phone, the endless cycle of guilt trips and demands. The silence has held. At first, it felt alien. I would instinctively check my phone, expecting to find a novel-length text from Mom or a smug social media post from Claire. But there was nothing. The only notifications I receive now are from work, a few friends, and bills that are solely in my name. Bills I consciously chose to incur. I used to wonder if I would miss them. I don't. I feel lighter, as if a massive, invisible weight has been lifted from my chest, a weight I never even fully realized I was carrying. When I come home to my own apartment now, there's no one waiting with a hand out for a new favor. No one implying that my paycheck is communal property. No one calling me selfish for daring to want my own things. I have established new routines. On Sunday nights, instead of bringing a pie to a kitchen where I am treated like an intruder, I cook a meal for myself. I go for long runs after work. I started saving again, not for someone else's emergency, but for my own future. It's astonishing how quickly a savings account can grow when you aren't constantly plugging the leaks in someone else's sinking ship. The rising number in my bank account is the quiet confirmation that I made the right choice. And for the first time, I don't feel the need to justify every dollar I spend on myself. I still see Claire's posts occasionally. The e-bike, the new clothes, the endless captions about her journey and her freedom. It's funny, in a sad sort of way. She's still playing the part of the golden child, only now there's no one standing in the wings to prop up the set. I don't leave comments. I don't react. If she wants to call me bitter, fine. If Mom wants to paint me as the selfish villain of the story, so be it. If Dad thinks I'm ungrateful, that's his prerogative. None of it matters anymore. The moment I stopped being their resource, their power over me evaporated, because that's the simple truth of it. I am no longer the family wallet. I am not the invisible background character. I am not the safety net they could stretch until it frayed and broke. I am just myself. And for the first time in my life, that is more than enough. I don't know what their house looks like now. I don't know if the mortgage is still hanging by a thread, or if Dad managed to juggle the numbers one more time. I don't know if Claire is paying her own rent or if Mom is secretly covering it. Maybe they're managing, maybe they're not, but that's the whole point. I am no longer the solution. What I do know is that it's no longer my problem. That night, I left a note on the fridge that said, "Figure out how to pay the mortgage without my name on it." That wasn't a threat. It wasn't revenge. It was a promise to myself. This journey isn't about punishing them. It's about closing a chapter. I will always remember how I was treated. I won't pretend it didn't happen, but I refuse to carry it with me anymore. I refuse to let their narrative dictate every paycheck and every small success I achieve. I am done being useful only when they are desperate. I am done hearing, "Family helps family," when it only ever meant me helping them. From now on, I choose where my time, my money, and my energy go. And they no longer get a vote. I might not have the picture-perfect family. I might not get birthday calls or invites to holiday dinners. I might be conspicuously absent from the smiling photos they send to relatives. But what I have is peace, and that is worth more than any e-bike, any laptop, or any piece of shame they ever tried to hang around my neck. What surprised me the most was how quickly the world expanded to fill the space they used to occupy. With that constant drain on my energy and resources gone, I had more capacity for my own life than I ever thought possible. I started running again, a hobby I'd abandoned years ago because my free time was always on call for their needs. I joined a local book club and met new people who knew me simply as Liam, not as Claire's dependable older brother. When I mentioned an interest or a hobby, no one rolled their eyes or called it a waste of money. The change was noticeable at work, too. I wasn't walking into the office in a fog of exhaustion after a late-night call about my parents' finances. I had more mental energy. I started volunteering for more challenging projects. My manager even commented on it one day. "You seem lighter lately, Liam." He was right. For the first time, I wasn't living in the shadow of someone else's perceived potential. I also started saying yes to things I would have automatically declined before. A coworker invited me on a last-minute weekend hiking trip. I went. A neighbor asked if I wanted to join their pickup basketball game. I said sure. These are small things, but they represent a life I was never allowed to have. I was always on standby for the next crisis, the next favor disguised as a family obligation. Even my apartment feels different. It's no longer just a place to crash between family emergencies, it's my home. I built shelves. I bought a proper desk. I put prints on the walls that I actually like. Every corner is a reminder of a choice I made for myself, not one that was made for me. And the best part is, I don't feel guilty for enjoying it. This is what closure really is. It's not about slamming a door in anger. It's about quietly walking through it and finally allowing yourself to live a life that isn't defined by carrying everyone else's baggage. I will never let them use me like that again. And if that means I have to stand on my own, then I'll stand taller than I ever have before.